Satisfy your need for happiness through your own curiosity with the Ranveer Show. I think a good point to begin today's conversation when it comes to the Indian epics is a book on astronomy that you were telling me about outside.
Huh.
What is that book?
Okay. So remember we talked about why only India has a Ityasa? This very stable language with low to no drift. That is very critical. The second most critical aspect is the very precise, accurate, sophisticated understanding of astronomy. India can check their boxes and ancient India can check the boxes on these both counts. And the third one is the Guru Shishya Parampara, which is also phenomenal. In the field of astronomy, Surya Siddhanta, I mean, there were many texts, many might have been lost, but whatever is remaining within that, the Surya Siddhanta is an ancient Indian text on astronomy. Much revered, of course, within India, but even outside India. When British became aware of it, aware of the India, they came here. The first thing they did, one of the first thing they did is taking away Surya Siddhanta. Taking away meaning taking Surya Siddhanta, translating. It was actually a transatlantic project about 17th, 18th century and after that. Transatlantic project. Professors from America and professors from United Kingdom and professors from France were working together to translate Surya Siddhanta. It's that much important. They understood the importance of it. Many of our modern day Indian academics or otherwise do not understand it. Why? I won't blame them completely, because this is not just a simple pocket book that anyone can understand. In fact, it has about 500 shloka, okay, 500 shloka, 14, 16 chapters, something like this. It is meant as a pocket book, but pocket book for a astronomy expert or astronomy genius. It's like think of all the physics formulas in modern physics, just summarized there. A novice will not know what to do with them, but somebody who is an expert will know what to do. That's how it is. So it is written in a very cryptic language, but it is fascinating because in the last episode, we looked at the multiples of 7,000. Like starting with 7,000 years ago, Mahabharata, 14,000 years ago, Ramayana, and more than 21,000 years ago, Rigveda, just as a simplicity. For simplicity's sake. You will find that there are epochs in the Surya Siddhanta text. Now, these are not easily revealed to us, but somebody has to work on it, and many great researchers have worked on it. If you find those epochs, they parallel these great historical development in Indian civilization or ancient Indian civilization.
You mean at these points the book was slightly changed?
Slightly changed. Something significant was happening. Okay, let's take this quick journey through the different epochs of Surya Siddhanta, and then you can see the connection with Ramayana, Mahabharata, and even other things. If you look at Surya Siddhanta today and you want to say, okay, how long we have this text, and there is some reference that you can read into Surya Siddhanta. For technicality, I will just remove it. Just will say these are the longitudes of nakshatra. Okay, we'll leave it at that, whatever that may be. What are their numbers? So they are given in Surya Siddhanta. Today we know the longitudes of nakshatra. If we see the gap between today's measurements of longitudes of nakshatra and given in Surya Siddhanta, we can immediately calculate that happened about 1500 years ago. The measurements made in Surya Siddhanta of longitudes of nakshatra 1500 years ago, 580 CE, 600 CE, something like this, about the time of Aryabhata, something like this. Now, when Westerners, when they came across Surya Siddhanta and they found this reference, do you know what they said? They said, oh, Surya Siddhanta is written 1500 years ago. Now, that itself was fascinating to them because they had the whole entire dark period until Copernicus and Newton and so on. So they were fascinated. But that is not the truth. Unfortunately, this fakery, or maybe error on their part, maybe not fakery, it still continues in academic circles. Like they think Surya Siddhanta is a very recent origin. It is not. Let me walk you now further. If you go further back and find out what is the another epoch where some correction, some update was made to Surya Siddhanta. Now, why do we need updates? Because astronomy is very, very stable. But when you go back thousands and thousands of years, even those things start changing.
You mean astronomy is the study of the stars
Study
around
of the
us.
stars, planets, nakshatra, positions, seasons, the connection of season with Indian lunar months, and so on and so forth.
Got it.
Okay.
But over thousands of years, the map of the sky changes slightly.
Map changes, the constants change. For example, Earth has many motions. One is Earth is rotating around itself. That's one motion. The second one is Earth is rotating around the sun. That's the second motion. Then Earth is, when it's rotating around the sun, it's inclined at an angle with respect to the sun. Interesting. Now, it has a one motion around itself, then around the sun. Those are two. There are many motions. I'll tell you only four.
Sure.
The third one is like this. The Earth's axis, where it points to, over a very long period of time, the Earth's axis points in a different direction. So like a top, the motion of a top, it goes like this.
Right.
That's called precession of the equinoxes. Precession of the Earth's axis is 26,000 year long circle. And then there is another one is a nod, like a Japanese nod, like this. So this right now, the angle is 23.5, but it's not always 23.5. It goes from 22 to 24.5 or something like this. Now, this is where it comes into the picture. Now, this is this Milankovitch cycle. These all adds up to those cycles that we talked about, the sea level rise and so on. Okay. Now, let's go back beyond that 500 CE. The first epoch going backwards we find is about 3000 BC. There's some interesting thing happened. That is when the Earth's axis was at 24 degree. The inclination, right now 23.5, that was its 24 degree. All Indian astronomy texts, as a simplicity, use 24 degree as the inclination. But people, the Westerners thought, when they translated Surya Siddhanta, they thought Indians don't know how to measure it properly. So they took, very crude measurement, 23.5, they're taking it 24. Because they did not know at that time the precision of the Earth's axis or what it does. But Indians are talking to the precision. You are an engineer. Do you know what precision they are talking? Just as a simple thing, 1 divided by 3438, 3438. That much precision they are talking when it comes to Earth's inclination and so on. So if you go back 3000 BC, something happened, which is the Earth's inclination is 24 degree. There are enough evidence in Surya Siddhanta. There were readjusting of parameters. Okay. You have enough evidence that many parameters in astronomy text of there were readjusted in 3000 BC. That, unfortunately, we think that's the beginning of Kali Yuga. No, it was the beginning of a calendar because they corrected the calendar. So 3000 BC is another epoch. Now go further. Equation of the sun, which means predicting where exactly sun will be in the sky. Now, because we see it every day, we think, oh, that must be easy. No, it's not easy. The equation of the sun that was adjusted, not defined for the first time. It was adjusted, rewritten, corrected at the same time as Mahabharata, 5500 BC. That we can show purely based on the internal evidence of Surya Siddhanta. This is a work of great researcher, Dr. Anil Narayanan. He was a former ISRO scientist. And
wow. Did it happen because of a celestial event also taking place?
Why they could have done it, we don't know. At least not for the equation of the sun.
Sure.
3000 BC is correct because many things were changing. So they did that. But the question you ask is very important for the next epoch. Now, if you go beyond 5500 BC, let's come to 8000 BC. Just like I told you about the longitudes of the nakshatra, now there is other one. So longitude is the vertical where they are. Latitudes is like the circles like this. Mumbai is like 19 latitude north, The latitudes of nakshatra that are given in Surya Siddhanta, if you try to take the latitudes then and now look at the latitudes now and see how long we have to go before we can match the both, you have to go to 8000 BC, which is 10,000 years before today.
As in the point at which a star has been above a point on the earth?
No. That is when the stars are there. They're fixed and they are there. There's some motion.
Okay. Nakshatra is a portion of the sky.
A star or a portion of a sky. So a portion of a sky is a nakshatra. Understood. And to designate that portion, just like when we say Mumbai, exactly which one is a Mumbai? We might say Flora Fountain or Hutatma Chowk is a Mumbai, right?
Sure.
So to specify something, they use a specific star in that area, 13-degree area, and they call it a Yoga Tara. Yoga
Gotcha.
Tara of that nakshatra.
Gotcha. So effectively, right now, the way modern humans map out the Earth is latitude and longitude of the Earth by drawing lines on the Earth.
Similarly,
At that point, they used to map out portions of the sky with respect to points on the Earth.
they did both. So there is a longitude latitude on the Earth. Yeah, they did both. It's amazing. Okay. And that's why Ujjain has so much importance, because Ujjain is the northernmost point for the sun to go as far as north. 23 degree, remember? 23 degrees. So 21st.
Tropic of Cancer.
So 21st June, and we're simplifying it, 21st June, sun would be exactly above Ujjain, because it has gone all the way to the north. And then now it's going to start turning backwards, backwards meaning to the southwards. So it was mapped. Actually, see, again, this is another digression. But when they refer to Brahmavarta, they sometimes say it is a 2 degree. And people sometimes descriptions come like that. And say 2 degree of what? They are taking the longitude, latitudes there and mapping it on the surface. So like when you go about 110 kilometers, the latitude approximately will change by 1 degree. They know this. They knew this. But back to this. So at 8000 BC, the Surya Siddhanta latitudes numbers are such that if we do the mathematical precise analysis based on the best of the modern astronomy we know, it tells us that those latitude measurements of nakshatras were made 10,000 years ago. Now, even to have the concept of latitude and longitude, they measure them. See, this discussion that you and me are having would be completely alien to a good number of academics, good number of modern individuals who simply are stuck in like a 2000 BC and 3000 BC and cannot go any further. But 8000 BC is not the end. If you go further back, now 8000 BC, why? Now you ask me, like, was there any specific reason? There was a specific reason, couple of reasons. One thing, think of this as the end of Younger Dryas. So maybe the civilization is beginning. Now that's my speculation.
Younger Dryas impact theory is about the meteor hitting the Earth
meteor
and the
and
Earth getting
cold.
flooded.
Yeah, cold. First fire and then cold for very, very miserable life conditions for like 1500 years or so.
An unnatural ice age. I mean, for lack of better word.
Correct.
It is natural,
No, that's a good way to describe it.
but
Fabulous.
it wouldn't have happened in the natural course of the Earth.
Correct.
Unless a meteor hit, which it did. So basically, when the conditions became okay,
Correct.
that's the end of the Younger Dryas.
And so that is one reason. Another one is that very traumatic period is remembered in an Indian memory by making use of astronomy. Again, it will be a digression. Maybe I will not go too much into it, but just briefly touching on it. It's known as Rohini Shakata Bheda. Rohini is a nakshatra, one of the 27 nakshatra. It is made up of that area of 5 stars, like a V, English V, So end of that corner, that V is that Rohini star. And then there are 2 stars. Anytime Saturn or Mars goes inside that V shape, it's considered that planet did the Bheda of a Rohini. Rohini Shakata Bheda. It split the cart of Rohini. That is the astronomy term in the Indian astronomy. Why is that important? You see the Saturn and then Indian astronomy text like the Surya Siddhanta says who does the splitting the cart of Rohini? It says moon, of course, always does it. But the additional two planets who do it is Mars and Saturn. Now I'm telling you, until 100 years ago, other than Indian astronomers like Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit, a contemporary of Lokmanya Tilak, everyone around the world considered this impossible.
That Saturn and Mars could not enter
going inside that V shape, right? In about 150 years ago, Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit did the calculation, just imagine, without computers, and said if Saturn does it, or Mars does it, or Saturn does it, it will happen before 5000 BC. Now that itself is fascinating. I have shown with a simulation that yes, that indeed happens. Both Mars and Saturn start splitting the cart of Rohini only if you go before 5000 BC.
Sure.
That's with the modern thing, right? Now TIFR, right in Mumbai, they published a paper maybe 20 years ago, and they showed that Mars can do it. And they showed the data using the NASA data, Jet Propulsion Lab data, which is great. And kudos to them, Mayank Wahiya, and I know them. But they also claimed Saturn will not do it. And again, just like that Arundhati Vasishta, I had a Shraddha in those. I said, if Surya Siddhanta is saying it, I trust Surya Siddhanta more than the modern guys, modern academics. Okay. I don't trust academics anyways. Okay. But so I said, let me do it. And when I actually tested it, I have shown, and there is a co-researcher of mine, Ameya Modak from Pune. He's in Finland right now. We actually showed there are 4 or 5 instances of Saturn splitting the card. The point is, these are all things happening, most of them during the Younger Dryas. And what is the correlation? After saying this, Rohini Shakatabhed, Surya Siddhanta, and the commentators on Surya Siddhanta, Indian commentators like Ganesh Daivadnya, go on to saying when Saturn or Mars split the card of Rohini, it is a very bad time for human beings, bad time for the earth. They're saying based on their Younger Dryas experience. So there were people who could do it.
Okay, couple of questions.
Yeah.
One, I'm an engineer. I know how computers work. I know how the universe works in terms of, they say that mathematics is the language of the universe. So even astronomy, it seems to me that when you're talking about angles of the earth, rotation, revolution, all that, it's basically mathematics.
Yes.
So if you fill all this mathematics into a computer program, won't the computer software be able to simulate the past in great detail?
Yes.
I'm assuming that that's the case. So then why do we need research to be done on when Saturn and Mars enters a particular node?
Okay. Great point. It does it, but just like if you dig, there are archaeological objects down there and they have a date in them. There is a carbon organic matter in them, but somebody has to dig them. Somebody has to take it out, take it to the lab,
Gotcha.
Mass spectrometry, spectroscopy. It's something similar. So the data exists. See, the NASA jet propulsion data on the astronomy exist. But in order for someone to go and look at it, that person should know Surya Siddhanta. That person should know these verses. That person should understand the meaning of it. That person should have a conviction that this is a factual narration of some time, and then would be willing to work for many years with no guarantee of success and no monetary benefit, very likely, spend money from your own pocket to figure out something. And somebody says, okay, so Saturn split the card of Rohini. So what?
Okay.
How does that benefit me today?
Dear ISRO. That's all I have to say. Okay, end of that particular tangent.
Yeah.
The other question I have for you is, when is the next point that Saturn and Mars are going to split the card of Rohini?
We don't know. It will, because it's a combination of many complex phenomenon that needs to occur. But let me quickly complete that in the sense, beyond that 8000 BC, there is a 12,000 BC epoch,
right,
which matches with Ramayana. What Surya Siddhanta says is that there were time when there were 2 pole stars. 2 pole stars in the sense, one in the north, one in the south, very bright. And anyone standing at the equator, like Singapore, so to say, looking in both directions, they would see these pole stars at the horizon.
Wow.
Now, in that chapter number 12 of Surya Siddhanta, it says 2 additional phenomenon. Just to manage time, I will not go into the deep details. One of them is, again, the obliquity has become 24. It was in 3000 BC, but if you go back in 12,000 BC, again it's 24. Do you know why? Because it's 24, it hit 24 in 12,000 BC, then went to 24.5 and came back to 24. That's why this 3000. So that's another evidence. And the third evidence is something more complicated. I presented on it at Oxford conference and they were totally lost. They had no idea. So I will not do that right now. But you can take this on a Shraddha. Those 3 phenomenons all come together and blurt out 12,000 BC. And our paper is out there, Rupa Bhati and myself. The paper is, a published paper is out there. Presentation is out there. My point is, that is also there in Surya Siddhanta. Now, what's the importance to Ramayana? Ramayana 12,209. Guess what? Here, 2 bright stars are given as a pole stars. Now, when does that happen? Something happened in 3000 BC, but also happened again in 12,000 BC. Guess what? Ramayana describes the pole star of Ramayana times. That is not the pole star we have today, because see, Earth axis is pointing somewhere. When it changes, the pole star changes. Okay? And Ramayana says in such a clear, beautiful language, no ifs, no buts. Brahma Rashir Vishuddhasya Shuddhasya Paramarshya Archishmantah Prakashante Dhruvam Sarve Pradakshinam. The Saptarshis are rotating around the Dhruva star, which is Brahma Rashi. Brahma Rashi is a Abhijit, is a Vega in modern astronomy. Same time when this Sugriv is going in the southern direction, again, just like east direction we talked about, southern direction, he's giving directions to Vanara party. He's saying, how far you are going? Okay, go to the southern tip of India. Now, to describe where that southern tip of India is, of course, they will see the ocean anyways. He says, go to the southern tip, then climb the Mount Mahindra, and then you will able to see star Agastya. Now, somebody who doesn't know astronomy says, what about it? But today, we can see star Agastya even from New Delhi. But during the Ramayana times, you could see star Agastya only if you go to the southern tip, like Kanyakumari, then climb Mount Mahindra. There is a Mount Mahindra. Then only you can see it. And the reason you could only see after doing all of this, because Canopus or Agastya had become a pole star in the south. So you see the Ramayana description, you take the Surya Siddhanta. Surya Siddhanta says 12,000 BC. Ramayana evidence says 12,000 BC. Bingo.
Okay. So the nakshatra at that point, which was over South India, today lies over New Delhi.
No, not quite that. So Agastya is still further south. But what happens is, because of this precession and because of their movement, Agastya, so what's happening is this. Like, think of the crankshaft motion in a car. Like, the piston is going back and forth, right? But that turns into a cyclical motion. So think of the Earth's motion here as a cyclical motion like this. But that turns into, for a person in, say, Mumbai or New Delhi, when can I see Agastya? So if New Delhi person is standing there for 15,000 years, he will say, I see Agastya there. I don't see Agastya now. Okay, I don't see Agastya. 4,000 years go by. I don't see Agastya. Another 4,000 years go by. Oh, I see Agastya. And it's slowly coming up. So something that's a circular, for a person on the ground with respect to specific star, it's going to become back and forth motion.
Okay. Gotcha. Wow, you explained some deep level of astronomy. How deep have you gone into astronomy in your studies?
I would say not enough. See, what happens is, this is true. Newton has said it. Like, when people were fascinated with Newton, and they asked him, so you must be feeling great. And he said, no, I feel like I have found maybe a pieces of sand from the whole beaches, whole beach right in front of me. It's like that. More you know, Upanishad talks about it, more you know, you realize how little you know.
True. That's been my journey over the course of the show also.
Absolutely.
At every point, every 50 episodes, I think there's no more content left. And then I'm humbled more at every 50 episodes.
Same here.
Same here. What I want to ask you about is the 34,000 year mark. You mentioned that outside.
Yes.
So effectively what you're saying is Surya Siddhanta was written 34,000 years ago. That's as far back as it goes.
Surya Siddhanta would actually go a lot older. Okay, at least some portions of it. No, the 34,000 years event that I refer to, 34,000 BC, we'll call it 34,000, 34K BC. This is, by the way, let me give the credit where it is due. My co-researcher, Rupa Bhati, fascinating researcher, fascinating. By the way, I translate it for her. We have a humor going on. She says, when I tell these people nobody understands. That's because she thinks at a very different level. It's difficult.
You mean in terms of astronomy?
Yeah. She I mean, you and me can do an episode on Rupa Bhati's research. It is that fascinating and that deep. But just this 34,000. So she found a reference in Maitrayani Upanishad or Maitrayani Aranyak, another Upanishad, where there is a king, Bruhadrath. And the king's Ikshwaku dynasty, the same dynasty as Bhagwan Ram. So the kings in his dynasty are mentioned, but remember, Bhagwan Ram is not mentioned. Now, what does that tell you? Bhagwan Ram is so important in the Ikshwaku dynasty. So if there was a discussion of Ikshwaku dynasty and some king after Bhagwan Ram, very likely Bhagwan Ram would have been mentioned. But that's not evidence we need to look at. But he's not mentioned. So this is way before that. That much we know. What he's talking of some astronomy phenomenon. I'll tell you two. He says the pole star is moving. I'll come back and explain why he's saying that. The another thing he says is that the spring equinox is in the Magha nakshatra. So that tells you when to nail it down. And something interesting. Now this is astronomy. But then he says something on the ground. He says the oceans are drying up. It's scary feeling. Oceans are drying up, meaning the water levels are going down.
An ice age is beginning.
Yeah. Now we know last 20,000 years, they are not drying up. Meaning this incident, just from a terrestrial point of view, this must be before 20,000. That's a very powerful evidence. Now we have to bring three things together. Oceans drying up, spring equinox in the Magha Nakshatra, and the pole star moving. Now, pole star is always moving. But in 38,000 BCE, again, we had the same situation like we had in 12,000 BCE. Like Brahma Rashi at the pole star here and pole star here. Okay. So that was existing in 38,000 BC. So that moving, so 4,000 years, they have seen the movement. Pole star is going away. Brahma Rashi is going away. That's what Brihad Rath has seen. He's seeing oceans drying up like that. And the spring equinox in Magha. Now, from our time, if you want to go back in antiquity, when was the last time spring equinox was in Magha? It was 8,000 BC. But that time oceans level were coming up and they were not going down. Okay. So we have to go to another 26,000 year cycle. That takes us to 34,000 BC. And now if you Brihad Rath is in 34,000 BC and there are many kings like Sagar and many others are mentioned, which means their time is even before that. Keep in mind, as we go back in antiquity, the physical evidence or even astronomy evidence is going to get less and less.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of it.
Physical evidence is the evidence that modern day archaeologists count as the ultimate kind of evidence.
Correct.
But the truth is physical evidence fades away. It erodes just because of how nature works, because of how time works.
Correct. And it overlaps, right? It overlaps on each other.
Yeah.
Like there was a house before, it was destroyed and built a new house. The evidence of old house is almost gone.
I just want to quickly mention something not related to India, which is that I remember Graham Hancock doing an episode with Joe Rogan about ancient Egypt, I believe. He said that the Egyptians that we talk about in the Egyptian civilization, which is also supposed to be at the same time as the Indus Valley civilization that we read about in school, those Egyptians counted themselves as the modern day Egyptians, and they believed that there was a much more ancient race of Egyptians dated back to almost 80,000 BC.
I have looked at that research myself and I agree with it. In fact, they talk of these 3 cycles of this 26,000 years. That is 75,000 years right there, 80,000 years.
Yeah. I can sense so many archaeologists getting pissed off with this conversation and I'm enjoying it. Because how else are you supposed to explore ancient human history? There is no way that digging will be able to give you any evidence.
Well, just because you raised the point, let me give you the evidence you can find from dirt archaeology right here in India. How's that? Going back to 70,000 years. Toba explosion. Have you heard this? Okay. Sumatra, like the Indonesian
volcano.
island, volcano, the Aceh Banda, that area, the volcano came and it spouted ash all over India, but even the bigger area, Arabian Sea, the evidence can be found everywhere. But if you go to India everywhere, but Jwalapuram, which is in Kurnool district of Andhra Pradesh, you see, and other places too, but you see actually, this is very interesting, stone tools first as you dig, then you see a ash layer, thick ash layer, referring to that Toba explosion. You can date it to 72,000 years ago, and below that stone tools, which means there were people before using it, there were people after who survived, and it was continuing.
Damn. So within the Earth's crust lies the Earth's story.
I wrote 3 books. My 4th book I'm working on is just a simple working title is History of Hindu Civilization, and I'm going to call it Brief History of Hindu Civilization, and essentially going to cover 75,000 years of Indian civilization.
If you enjoyed today's clip, make sure you check out these curated playlists that we've made especially for you related to the subject that was spoken about in this clip.